Hello and welcome back to Vox Terra. The show's purpose it is to help us, you and I, get politics and the people focused on the long-term survival of the species instead of tearing each other down over some of these hot-button social issues. And you know, if you've seen my show before, that often I like to pepper it with some funny voices. Today, COVID-19 and the limits of consumer-based capitalism, or COVID-19 and the limits of consumer-based capitalism, to use the old-time Brooklyn kind of voice I'm calling it. So point one out of this, I got talking point one, the idea from it, from an NPR article that I heard. The NPR article was about the fact that the air quality in China was improving because of all the closures during the COVID-19 shutdowns. The article entitled, and I'll do the German professor voice for you here, Why China's air has been cleaner during the coronavirus outbreak. So, according to this article, you've got cleaner air. You've got, and this article also points out what I point out in other videos, that auto exhaust and diesel and these types of fossil fuel burnings contain fine particulate matter that lodge deep in our lungs. There's benzene in a lot of the exhausts. That's a carcinogen. And not to mention, it's also a greenhouse gas. So all this running around what turns out to be non-necessary activities, rather than adding value, right? That's a economics concept. Remember, capitalism is supposed to be adding value. So rather than adding value, to a large extent, this system of constant consumption, buy, sell, buy, whether you need the stuff or not, is taking value away because it is pumping our lungs full of carcinogens and our earth full of heat-trapping greenhouse gases, not only causing the cancer epidemic, but also superheating our planet and destabilizing the climate. Really all to keep people busy chasing the latest shiny object. That's limitation number one. Limitation number two, because we're trapped in this system, German professor again, of buy, sell, buy, politicians are afraid and they hesitate to close unnecessary services. That was the same in China, where it's a capitalist system, whatever people call it, it's a capitalist system, and in the US and throughout the world. So the second thing is, not only is the system not objectively adding value, but it's preventing us from taking the necessary action to deal with a global pandemic and many other global crises, including the climate crisis. It's preventing action. Two subpoints to that. One, I heard one environmental activist or a scientist, I'm not sure who any longer, maybe it was on Living on Earth, make a great, fantastic quote that I think everybody should know. And the first time I heard it, I didn't realize how profound it was. It took a few times of me mulling it over. She said that our economy is really fundamentally the earth right now. It's the clean air, the water, the soil. That's what, in reality, objective reality, everything we have comes out of. But yet we're keeping people busy just running around chasing these shiny objects, getting paid to do that, even though it's really poisoning us. Another subpoint to point two and point one is, remember the blue laws? Do you remember the blue laws? Well, they're fading from memory. The blue laws, and here I'll give you some Southern preacher. The blue laws say that everything shall be shut down on Sunday, right? Do you remember those days when everything was closed on Sunday? No business, and everything's closed after a certain time of night in some of those heavy religious towns in the old days. Remember? The Lord says you shall respect the Sabbath. Well, here's an interesting coalition people are missing by being so divided, right? The Lord says you shall respect the Sabbath and that shall be your day of rest. Okay? And also, you shall not go out at night gallivanting and carousing. You shall be home with your family, right? So that's another possible coalition we're overlooking. If we're going to start to have a way of putting the brakes on this, constant consumption, constant busy, constant polluting ourselves, we need all the coalitions we can get. Point 3, this system not only is not adding value, but detracting value to a large extent. Not only making it so we're not able to deal with the crisis because we don't want to shut down the unnecessary consumption, which would give us a rest. It also steers our energy and our talent towards these short-term consumer acquisitions. Okay, all human, think about how your life is being spent. Is it really being spent towards something that's truly going to help the long-term survival of our species? Or is it being spent towards short-term consumer purchases and acquisition? And there goes our lives. So now here we are with a pandemic, not prepared for it because everything is geared up towards that, rather than our survival and forward thinking. So another important point right now is we're at a moment where if we stay calm, we can deal with this, because the pandemic is forcing us to look at our human-made system, our human-made consumeristic system. But the food will still grow. Okay, the weather cycles, the seasons are still operating. But if we keep on our merry way, as my grandmother would have said, she was born in 1910, and that's what she used to tell me growing up. She said, the scientists have been warning us for years now, but people want to keep going on their merry way. That's how she would put it. People want to keep going on their merry way. Born in 1910, even though the scientists have been warning us for years. And she told me that maybe in the 80s, the 90s, for a long time. Okay, so if you watch my earlier video on the Australian wildfires, and there I explain how this heating planet is throwing off all the world's weather systems. I read in Business Week magazine in 1997, and this should have been screaming headline news. It should have been screaming headline news. And I've told you this before, the media really underreports climate change because of the power of the fossil fuel and related industries in the media. Okay, so this should have been screaming headline news. 1997 in Business Week, I remember reading, there was a Pentagon study that warned global warming, which it was more appropriately called then, could shut down the Gulf Stream because it changes that heat differential from pole to equator. It could shut down the Gulf Stream. Well, if one of these more dire effects happen, we're not just looking at increased wildfire, stronger storms, more extreme, unpredictable weather. We're looking at a shutdown of a vital Earth weather system. And then I don't know how human civilization could go on. We're not prepared for that. Even if we can get away from everything, constant consumption, we're not prepared for that. So the administration, the Trump administration, talks about doubling down on the current system, funding the fossil fuel industry, the hotels, airlines. And again, the media makes little attention to all the fossil fuel funding that Trump gets. I've shown that in an earlier video too. So the Trump administration wants to double down on business as usual. And I've shown you that they're going to justify this as, this is a crisis moment, it wasn't their fault. He loves to say that, it wasn't their fault. But I've shown you in earlier videos also, this system is totally subsidized. We, the taxpayers, completely subsidize, we pay for, the government supports the dominant industries, crisis time or not. But it becomes more noticeable during the time of crisis. So that people don't question the system, so they don't question and challenge that these same dominant industries are going to be propped up all over again, they turn to the age-old tactic of get people to focus their anger on another nation, or worse, an outnumbered ethnic group. It's an age-old tactic to take your eyes off of how all the money's going to the big boys or to these dominant industries. Take your eyes off how the problems of the system. Instead, focus your anger on an outnumbered group of people. Well, look, this is a time we need to stay calm and have as much unity as possible. So even if you're not trying to protect these protected industries like fossil fuels, it's not a wise idea to put everyone on edge, making a certain percentage of the population afraid they're going to be the targets. So the last talking point is when you go out there on social media or keeping your 6 foot distance from other people or on the phone talking to people, you let them know the system's not working. It's not adding value. It's forcing it so we can't shut things down. It's not steering our efforts towards the long-term survival of our species. So instead, let's focus on, instead of blaming some outnumbered ethnic group, let's focus on supporting politicians who offer real vision, or at least ones who have a little vision. So that's why I was very excited, and still am, about Bernie Sanders' campaign and his Green New Deal, because there you're talking about, retooling the system, taking all these trillions of dollars we're using to prop up this system anyway, but just shift them towards a greener, less toxic, less polluting economy. I also like it that Bernie Sanders is challenging this system and points out the fact of how it's actually working. Andrew Yang, I thought, was real interesting. His universal basic income, that idea, what he was suggesting was allow capitalism to function as people believe it's supposed to, which is dynamic, rather than supporting these same industries. Capitalism says it's supposed to be a dynamic system, so these industries would go out of business when they're not needed, but then people want to defend them. So instead of doing that, you let capitalism work how it's supposed to, but give everybody a universal basic income so they can chart their lives forward. The business owner can chart his or her business forward or to a new stage in business. And the employee can figure out a new game plan. That was Andrew Yang's idea of a universal basic income. I thought that was very exciting. Joe Biden, I watched him during the last debate, and he did have some understanding of greener infrastructure. He talked about electric vehicle charging stations. So it wasn't a complete rebuilding of the same thing. So I hope this was helpful. If it was, please share. Please share my video. Please use the talking points I provided you. Please subscribe so I can build up the subscriber base. Please click the notification so you know when I'm putting up a new video. Please like. Please comment. You've seen the video now. What's working for you, what isn't? Please make those comments constructive, though. I like to get a positive environment going here. Anybody can throw insults out, arg-barg at someone. I'm not crazy about that. And until next time, stay well, and peace be with you.